Hi, and welcome to session 4 of my React Hooks course. In this session, we're going to learn how to deal with color styles, text styles so that they can be reusable, and also we're going to learn how to set up light mode and dark mode from a basic perspective. So you can see on the live website, I can switch from dark to light, and you're going to see that it's going to change automatically. And this is quite easy to set up. Back to our website, I just want to mention two side notes. The first one is errors. So whenever you have issues with your code, you're going to see them in the terminal, but also you will see them in the problems. Let's focus on the terminal. Here it simply says that I have defined link, but I'm not using it here because before we were using the link in hero section, and we decided to delete it because eventually we're going to create a button component. So make sure to remove unused code. And in this case, we're going to remove link. Now, when it comes to errors on the terminal, you might have to reset the server again. So first of all, we're going to save this, and then we're going to do Control-C and then Gatsby, develop, enter. Now, the second issue is when you use style components with Gatsby, and when you refresh the page, especially on a live website, it's going to have a 0.2 second in which it's loading the CSS and it has a blank page first. And that can be really annoying. So what you can do is to install the Gatsby style components plugin. And to do that, you're going to need to use this command right here. So npm install Gatsby plugin style components, and also Babel plugin style components. And just copy the whole line here, and we're going to go and click on a new terminal and then paste that whole line and press enter. So this is how you install a Gatsby plugin versus an npm library. An npm library you don't really need to set up inside the config, but for a plugin specific to Gatsby, we're going to have to edit the Gatsby-config. First of all, I'm just gonna remove this second terminal, and then I'm gonna jump between pages. And there's a shortcut in VS Code for doing that. So instead of Command B and then going to the appropriate file, you can always hide that and also Command P and search for the file itself. So we're gonna search for Gatsby-config and then press enter. And this is a really good way to switch between files and to find the files without having to look inside the navigator. And here you can see that we have the site metadata, and then we have the plugins. For each plugin, you either have just the name of the plugin or a full configuration of a specific plugin. And in this case, you're gonna have to set it inside curly braces, the name of the plugin, and whatever options that you can have with this plugin. But for the style components for Gatsby, we only need to set just the name right here. So you can copy this, including the backticks, and then just paste that right after the comma. So backticks and then Gatsby-plugin-style components, and then finish that with the backticks. You can also add a comma at the end. So we're gonna save that, and then we're going to restart the server. Control-C again, and then Gatsby develop. Awesome. So I'm gonna close the terminal, and I'm gonna go back to the website. Then I'm gonna do Command B to open the navigator because I'm going to create a new folder. So inside components, I'm going to right click it and new folder. I'm going to name this one styles. Inside the new styles folder, right click it, new file, name the new file textstyles.js. So in this file, I'm going to put all of the text styles that I have in my design system. But first, I'm going to use style components. So import style from style components. Then I'm going to create a reusable style component that I can include throughout my site. So export const h1 with a capital H is equal to style.h1 backticks. Then back to Figma, I'm going to select the text style for h1, and I'm gonna get the two values that are essential, such as the font weight and the font size. So let's copy these two CSS properties, and then back to our code, we can just paste that right here and then save. So now if you want to use this reusable text style, then you can go back to hero section. And in hero section, we have the title. Instead of starting from scratch every single time, you can include a reusable style component. So instead of saying style.h1, we're going to remove .h1 and do style parentheses and then h1. So when you type h1, it's going to say auto import from, and that's the file that you have just created. So you can just click on it, and when you do, it's going to import the h1 from our text styles. If you don't see the auto import, you're going to have to write this line right here from scratch. As a result, I can go back to my title, and then I can remove these two CSS properties that are already included in my text style. So let's delete these two lines and then save. If you do that, you're going to see that there's no change, and that's great. That means less CSS code here and more reusability in my text styles. So you can imagine that when we're going to have a lot of pages and a lot of components, this is going to save you a lot of efforts. But on top of that, you have a single place where you can change all the H1, all the H2, etc. So we're going to do the same for the rest. And I'm just going to copy and paste the code from the text content, and you can also do so. But we're just going to repeat those steps and get the font weight and the font size. Sometimes we're going to use text transform with uppercase. Now back to my code, I'm just going to paste the rest. So the CSS is very easy to read. It's just font weight, font size, H2, H3, and then we have the P. We have the body main, body intro, medium text, caption, caption 2. And the only difference here is that caption 2 is going to have a text transform for uppercase, and the small text is a little bit smaller, and small text 2 is uppercase. One important detail is the line height. So for the body text and the smaller text, it's usually important to have a line height of at least 130%, which is why the titles, they don't have it, and the body intro, body main, and smaller, they have it. So this is for better readability. So I'm going to save this and go back to hero section. For description, instead of setting these CSS properties, I can just do the same technique. So style parentheses and then medium text. But you can notice that sometimes auto import doesn't work. So you're going to have to go back to these manual lines here, and you can just add a comma right after H1 and then type medium text. It's going to auto detect from this file. So just add that. It's going to be great, meaning that it's unused yet. And going back to description, we can type it and then use the auto completion, which is extremely convenient. So when you save this, you're going to see it's going to look like this, and there's no change in our UI. You can refresh it, and we have less code. So that's beautiful. Next, we're going to do the color styles. For most designers, this is the typical essential setup. So you have the text styles and you have the color styles, and we're going to do that in code. Let's go to the left and right click on the folder styles, new file, and this time color styles.js. So for colors, there are multiple ways to go about it. A lot of designers know about color variables in CSS, but it's not quite as powerful as, let's say, style components with JavaScript and props. And then you have the context API, which is definitely more advanced. So this is my preferred way. I like to keep it simple, and all you need to do is to set an object. But first we're going to export it, and then const, it's going to be called themes because we're going to use it for both light and dark modes. So themes is equal to curly braces, enter. So this is an object, which means that it can have multiple properties for light and dark modes. For each property, we can say, starting with light, colon, curly braces, and again, we can have multiple properties. Starting with text1, colon, quotes for the value itself, and we're gonna set this one to black. And then we have text2, primary, secondary, background, background2. And each of those colors have the dark mode version. So for text2, I'm going to command click on the color itself, and I'm gonna grab the RGBA value because we're using transparency. And typically on the web, when you use a color with transparency, you're gonna need the RGB value plus the alpha opacity. So let's copy RGBA parentheses and everything in the parentheses. Then back to our code, we're gonna add a new property. So right after black, comma, new line, and then text2, colon, quotes, and then paste RGBA parentheses and these values. So the first one is red, green, blue, and then the opacity value. Awesome. So let's set the same for the background color, which is really important. And here we're gonna get the hex value. So going back to my code, comma, background color, camel case, quotes, and then the hex value. Now, if you want to add the dark mode version, so right after the light property and after the curly braces, we're going to add a comma, and we're going to set a dark colon and then curly braces. Now make sure that both of these properties have the same properties inside, so we can just copy the three properties and then paste it right there. Awesome. Now I'm just gonna paste the actual values for the dark mode. So we have white for text1, and then white with opacity for text2, and then the background color, which is dark. Okay, so once you have this, make sure to save it. And if you want to use these colors, then you can go back to hero section, for example, and we can go to title. And here, instead of setting to white, we can set a variable. And to use a variable, we're going to have to replace this with $, curly braces, and then the name of the variables, which is themes. Now, when you type themes, make sure to use the auto completion and auto import. So press on it, and then I have my object called theme, and it's been imported automatically. So I can go back here, and since this is an object, I can use multiple properties. So right after themes, I can put dot, and then light, and then dot text1. Awesome. So when I save this, you can see that it's using the black color. And if I was to change this to dark, then save it, it's going to use white. Now, because I'm using a background that is typically dark, I'm going to use the dark theme text. So that's how you use color styles. And lastly, I want to show you how to create a global style. So if you go back to layout, you're going to see that layout.css is our global style. But because this is a CSS file, you cannot use, let's say, a JavaScript variable inside this. And if you go to any component or even layout.js, there's no way to set a global style like layout.css. So style components has a solution for this. Because remember that style components are typically per component and has no style that is going to be shared across your entire website. So we're gonna right click on the styles folder and new file. We're gonna name this one global style.js. In this file, we're going to start by importing style from style components, and then export const global style is equal to create global style. And here we can select auto import. So this is something from style components that we can use. And right after create global style, we have backticks. And then inside those backticks, we can set the similar global styling as found in layout.css. In fact, we could have just moved the entire thing to global style. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to add some new stuff such as body. Then for the body tag in CSS, it's going to be the entire page. So we're going to set the CSS property called background colon and use our color styles. So $, and then curly braces, themes, auto import. So press enter, dot light, dot background color, and then semicolon. So we're going to save this. And right now it's not being used anywhere. We're going to have to import that in a global file, which is our layout.js. So remember that layout.js is where we're going to set the header and the footer, but also anything that surrounds the main content. So that's why we're going to put global style right here, because we want our global style to be on every single page. So right before main, we're going to set open brackets, global style, again, auto import it, and then close this bracket right here, and then save. Now, when you do that, you're going to see that the background will change. It's barely visible, so let's give it a try. We're going to go back to global style and change this to dark, and then save. You see that it works. So let me bring that back to light, and we're going to set dark mode while we're at it. So if you want to set dark mode in CSS, it's super simple. You just need to set a media query. So at media, parentheses, prefers dash color dash scheme colon dark, and after the parentheses, curly braces, background colon, and then $, curly braces, themes dot dark dot background color. So always finish with a semicolon at the end of each CSS property, and then we're going to save this. And so if you go to your system and change to dark mode, you're going to see that the background changes. And so that was really simple. In fact, this is going to work really well on a mobile phone because the mobile phone has the dark mode option and it changes automatically based on the time of the day, and your website will do the same. Now I'm just going to go to my color styles, and I have a lot more colors to input. And here is basically the same techniques. It's just that we're going to have a lot more properties. So it's going to be useful as we build a website. Now I'm just going to paste the whole thing. And so the same way we have export const themes, light and dark, but then we also have the primary color, secondary color, and then we have the card colors, the hover for the card, the pricing card, the status, then the modal, and the same for dark mode. All these values are taken from the design, so I'm just saving us a lot of time to set up this and also to not have to repeat all of this code as we build the website. So let's make sure to save this file, and let's deal with this very simple error in global style. We're going to go back to global style. It seems that style was not used, so we can delete this as well as the comma and save. Awesome. In the next session, I want to show you how to create a simple button component with props. So I'll see you in the next session.